All right, good morning everyone. So I am headed to work. I can't find my mascara. I misplaced it. Anyways, I'm headed to work. A little worn out. Had a busy weekend, but I'm still going to work. But I want to talk about work. So I had to let a job go. Last night something came my way and I had to make a decision. And I am somebody who tends to look at this on this side and I look at it on that side and I'm like, done deal. Once I make my mind up, it's done. So last night I was working and it was like my 25th day, right, at this job. So I'm still considering myself new. Now, mindset is everything, right? So I went in with the mindset that I am new and I'm going to take advantage of being new. I'm not going to have it all together. I'm going to be very cautious going into a new place, figuring out who the players are, what they're like before I invest myself, before I care too much, right, about a job. So I went in 25th day. I already had like a 2-hour test at this restaurant, which is unheard of to me because most places do not do that. Most places you jump in and you learn as you go, right? And most companies can handle those mistakes. They can handle if you're making mistakes. So last night the weird thing about this is I had to let the job go too because I covered myself. Every time I had a question, I asked the people I worked with, my coworkers, and I do like my coworkers, so I have to be careful what I say here. I asked my coworkers, where is this? What do you do with this? Like I had asked the other night, okay, so this person wants ranch dressing on their salad and on the side. What is the best way to communicate this to the kitchen? Because, you don't want to mess up the kitchen. So my coworker said, just do special instructions and type it in. Okay, so I did it. And then I've had this woman harassing me. I mentioned on the other video I did, and I was getting nervous. So here I am trying to not let her shake me, but she's on me, she's on me. She's an older woman. She's old school. So she's got her way of thinking, and that's all there is to it. And there's no communication. You can't communicate with someone like this. So she comes up to me. Did you know there is a button for that ranch dressing on the side? And she was like really in my face. And I said, you know what? I asked, and this is what I was told. No, there's a button. Okay. So I went back and I told this person, and this person's like, oh, screw her. She's a witch, basically, So this is kind of what I was dealing with in this job. People are like, this place is a hot mess. I saw somebody quit. I saw another person quit. I'm only there 25 days, right? And this is the way it is in the restaurants. There's a high turnover. So I'm like, why'd this person quit? Got an answer for that. What about this person? Well, they had punished him with only giving him 2 days a week, and there was no communication. And he's like, I know I'm a good worker and I don't need them to tell me I'm not, etc. And I think he is. So anyways, last night I had asked someone, about the beer, and I'm like, okay, so, after doing a test for the menu, you have to get it on the computer too. You have to take that information and put it on the computer. And there is a lot of information. So I said, he wants the bigger beer, so how am I putting this in? And they're like, push this button. And I'm like, you sure? Because, this button would make more sense. And he's like, just F it, just put that in. Okay, so I put it in. Come to find out it was the wrong button. Go back to the bar, and they're like, no, you need to comp it. Put it in under a different button. Actually, it wasn't even a comp because they didn't make it. Go back, have to get the manager's card. He checks it, and I knew this was coming, and I already got another job because I could kind of feel this coming. Because the boss also said, oh, I have tons of availability for you. And then once I started getting harassed by this woman making up stuff about me half the time, he's like, oh, I only got 2 days for you. So Saturday I confronted him and I'm like, what happened to my Friday night? You were going to give me 3 nights. And he's like, oh, we'll have to talk about that. And then he said he'd hire this guy back, and the guy told me he never called him. So I saw this coming. And that's one thing I tend to have, is a lot of discernment. Um, so he's like, so this is another mistake you made, and I can't afford this, even though there was no, it wasn't even made. And I'm like, hey, I'm still learning. And he's like, everybody has a week of training and that's it. And, basically that's all you get. And so I usually work off of principle more than I do my feelings. So although I felt disrespected by him, which he was being disrespectful, because he was just saying a couple things that were disrespectful. So I can feel it, but I usually act on principle. So I'm like, okay, so he's like, so we're going to have to do retraining or something. And so I thought about it and I'm like, okay, retraining is an admission of guilt on my part that I'm not trained. And I'm like, that's bull, because I am trained. It's just, it takes practice, right? Because when you're waitressing, you get thrown all kinds of weird orders. Like the other night, this guy wanted soda water and a shot glass, which the bar is like, what do you mean a shot glass? I'm like, I don't know, that's what he wants. So so he came back over and he went up to the bar and he's like, oh, I want it in a rocks glass. So the guy he was with was like, thank you for being a good Samaritan and putting up with him, because he knew this guy was really difficult. Anyways, so principle. So I was thinking, not only am I being harassed, which I had prayed about and said, God, do you want me to continue to be, harassed and put up with this baloney, or do you want me out of this? And I'm like, no, you can put up with it, Melissa. You've got the ability to ignore her. And I was very close to giving it back to her too, which I was trying not to do. I mean, she forgot a lobster the other night with the steak. And I'm thinking, how in the world do you forget something so big? So I said to my boss, I said, well, we got her over here forgetting the lobster with her steak. So, I mean, how do you justify that? And he's like, well, there's a difference between a big, a mistake like that once in a while compared to your little mistakes. So I'm like, well, I'm still learning, and, I'm still new, and this is the way I am. So, so last night he wasn't willing to communicate. He wasn't willing to hear me out. So I made a decision and said, okay. So I went up to the front and said, cut my tables. And they're like, oh, you want to be cut? I'm like, yep, so-and-so is being a jerk and you can cut me. So they cut me. So I went in the kitchen and said, I will finish my 2 tables I have left. I am cut. I asked the front to cut me and I am done. And he's like, well, you didn't have to go that far. And I said, well, I'm not being retrained. I am new, and basically I'm not being retrained. So when it comes down to it, the bottom line is, am I going to stick to my guns and say, this is how I learn, this is how I operate, or am I going to be pushed around by a company that is saying you have to know everything by now? And so it came down to principle for me, that I am going to stand my ground. I won't be micromanaged, and I will have the ability to have the communication there. So I had to let that job go. I'm on my way to my other job and will pick up some more work just to make up for this. But when I have customers giving me, the other night was a $32 tip, what was it? Was it 2 people? I'm getting a compliment. I put it on here. I'm getting compliments. The customers are happy. I'm bringing in money. So when he thinks he's losing money because of, a few mistakes, and those mistakes too were not mine. Like, let me see. They had the asparagus. It was too salty. So the lady, I took it back. So they put no sauce on it. And then they had a burger. They did not cook all the way. So I had to bring that back. So those were not on me. So when you have a company that's not got a very negative system, and that's what I'm talking about here, what kind of system you're working for, You need to say, the system does not line up with my thinking. I'm new. I am going to be acting like the dumbest person in the room because I am learning. And that's what you want to do. I've done a lot of mindset stuff where you do want to be that person who doesn't know anything so that you can pick up stuff and learn it their way. And then I had one of my coworkers saying, last night we happened to just be talking, and she's like, so I'm working on Friday nights. And I'm thinking, oh, there's my Friday night. He gave it to somebody else. And we just talked about the, lack of, order, the lack of organization on the computers, etc. So when you have a company trying to blame you and not looking at themselves, it's just kind of time to go. So I will pick up something better. And I think even if this didn't happen, the way I was seeing the company operate after having like tons of experience myself as a waitress, I don't think it would have worked. So just knowing like, okay, this happened for a reason and it's for my good, and just move on and don't look back. So that's what I got for now, guys.